Welcome, everybody.
There.
Hi there.
Hi, Christine.
It's Christmas at Christine's house.
Yeah, look at you. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us today. I'm Barb Solomon, and I'm here with Mary Chase, Chelsea Richens, Julie Stone,
Hello.
Renee Sugar, Christine Pignol, Louis Teresa von Straten, and Gordy Richens. So
Yay.
far, that's who's joining us today. This is Talks on Tuesday, and we're here for 30 minutes to just chat about different topics that are kind of metaphysically based and spiritually focused. And we're so glad that everyone's here. And we will be recording this and posting it on YouTube later. So if you don't want to have your face seen, or if you can't because of work, Gordy, that's okay. Just keep your camera off. Otherwise, you're welcome to join us and jump in if you want to chat, add something. And we'd like to just kind of keep the conversation going round and round. So today we're talking about the Tao Te Ching. Oh, this is my little tiny pocket-sized book, Tao Te Ching. And I've had this, a good friend of mine gave it to me in 2000. And that's kind of when I started seriously studying this book, which I found fascinating. And it actually helped me understand Reconnective Healing and Solomon Speaks so much better, because a lot of the concepts here Solomon Speaks are very similar. So I'm going to read chapter 51 and then we'll talk about it. Every being in the universe is an expression of the Tao. It springs into existence, unconscious, perfect, free, takes on a physical body, excuse me, lets circumstances complete it. This is why every being spontaneously honors the Tao. The Tao gives birth to all things, nourishes them, maintains them, cares for them, comforts them, protects them. It takes back itself, creating without possessing, acting without expecting, guiding without interfering. That is why love of the Tao is the very nature of things. So, maybe you want to comment on that?
Would you, I know nothing about it, but would you say that it's kind of like talking about the source or universal infinite knowledge and love and all that?
Yes, I think that that's a good way of doing it and looking at it, Julie. From my understanding, it's first of all, it's non-religious. So when you talk about like soul or spirit, it oftentimes, although not always, that carries kind of a religious connotation. From the perspective of the Tao, it is more just kind of what is. And the beginning of the Tao Te Ching, there's a comment that the name that describes the Tao, or the Tao that can be said, is not the eternal Tao, because when you give it a name, even the Tao, it constricts it. And what is beyond constriction. It's like infinity. And that's one reason why it reminds me so much of Reconnective Healing, because it's similar, as you can't explain what it is except for saying it is. So does that help, Jules?
Yeah, and words are not always perfection. So
Yes.
But they're all we've got until we do thought transfers. So.
right. Which would be very cool.
Seems to me that it's kind of big picture. Like the Tao, they talk about it as the way. So it's sort of a, here is how we are. This is how we are in the universe. It just is. This is how the universe runs. And it seems like it's from what you read, sort of caring and compassionate, loves us, but in also some other things I've read, and I told Barb yesterday, almost everything I know about the Tao comes from fortune cookies. because I've just never really gone there. But I was reading this quote on, the all-knowing Wikipedia. The way of heaven, for example, is ruthless. When autumn comes, no leaf is spared because of its beauty, no flower because of its fragrance. And to me, it sounds sort of like the caring distancing that we see in the reconnective healing frequencies. For those of you who are familiar with it, I know everyone here on the Zoom is, but people on YouTube may not know about that. But Eric Pearl often says the frequencies don't care.
Impersonal.
They're impersonal. You get the healing that's most appropriate for you, not necessarily what you want. It's going to do what it's going to do to balance.
Yes.
And it sounds to me a little bit like the Tao is the same way.
Yes, that's true. And the book, the Tao Te Ching, is actually almost like a guide to living that way. And I think of it almost like as a river. The Tao is just a flow, and we can get in the river and like as Abraham Hicks says frequently, you can either go upstream or go downstream, and which is easier? Well, of course, going downstream. And you go upstream, you kind of create splashes and ripples. And so you're going to push against things, or are you going to allow things to happen and flow along with it? And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to accept every single thing that comes at you. Like if you go into a restaurant per se, and it's like, okay, you have a choice of what you want to eat. So you can choose, one thing or the other. And if they don't have what you want, well, then your choice is you can either find something there that you want to eat or go someplace else. There's a lot of ways of being in the flow and still, making choices and making decisions. But if you go in the restaurant and start saying, God dang it, I want this, and why don't you have it? Then that's kind of like going against the Tao, and that's creating splashes, and life gets a little more challenging.
Yeah.
So you probably wouldn't have a militant activist Taoist.
It's interesting because there is actually, they talk about battles and things like that, and they say that in battle, and I don't know the exact comment, but in battle, they want their opponent to be true of heart and give their opponent the best opportunity that they can, and they want their opponent to feel that way about them. So it's a high vanity, so that it's a battle not of hating somebody, but it's like, may the best person win, and we're going to go about this with good intentions and with our our spirit clear and true, and we're not going to do dirty tricks type things. And so, but it is in some situations, those things come up. So it's whatever arises, you flow with the best intentions and keep your heart open and pure, I think.
War and good intentions to me don't go together, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think, oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking of the context of when this was written down. There were warriors. There was a warrior culture in some ways. So maybe we've, God willing, some of us have moved away from that.
Yes.
Something that keeps sort of percolating inside me is that sometimes within each of us, we are at odds with what is. So part of us might want to do something in a particular way, but another part of us is resisting that at the same time. So it's really a difficult place to be inside your own soul and have this sort of disparate conflict about what the truth is. Because I think what is usually revealed is your heart usually knows what the truth is. And if you do pay attention to what your heart is telling you, regardless of what maybe your intellect is telling you, or maybe some outside influence is trying to persuade you to see in a certain way, that you have to find a place within which is centered and
Mhm.
deep. And in so doing, you have a way to find the clarity that you need, maybe to make a decision about something. But
Mhm.
I find that, that's an example that I sort of strongly relate to, because, it's like presenting one way to the world that you want others to see you, but yet you're really not living your truth. And I think it's usually always hard to cover it up.
Yes, that's true. And when you learn to trust that inner feeling and accept that, then that is where your authentic self kind of begins to emerge. And I think that that's what the world sees.
And I
And
think
I agree with what you're saying as far as like, you're feeling something very strongly about something and you may not even like how you're feeling about it. You don't feel good about feeling that way, but it's just there. And in fact, this is something that happened to me not that long ago. And I talked through it and I accepted it and I worked it and I wrote on it. And then eventually I realized that I'm done feeling this way, this strong way. And my feelings have shifted. And it was through acceptance and then talking and working through it and writing about it and stuff that helped me get there. But um it didn't feel good when I was feeling that way, but I almost felt like I needed to hang on to it for some reason. But I knew, and I'm glad that I was able to eventually get through it, because I mean, we are human, I mean, we talk about living this ideal life of being in the flow, but we are human, and we do have egos and stuff like that too. That's part of it.
I think to encapsulate it, it's basically following your instinct, and which is almost, it's a core sensation, but it's not always present in front, so it's not easy to follow it, which is what you and Renee have both, expressed.
And when I'm trying to do this, and every day we encounter sadness and unfairness and the fear of loss, I try to put on like I call it the Dalai Lama mindset. And he is such a good example for me of, this is what comes to pass. Earth is the place where souls go to school. And you enter and they go, oh, take this ego with you. You'll need it where you're going in order to learn. And it's just, deal with what comes to pass. That's your job here.
Yeah, it's kind of like learning to accept, to receive. And I just flipped open chapter 70. It says the teachings that my teachings are easy to understand and easy to put into practice. Yet your intellect, yet your
even that
intellect,
is well said.
yeah. Yet your intellect will never grasp them. Oh, this is perfect. This is kind of like reconnective healing too. So your intellect will never grasp them. If you try to practice them, you'll fail. So it's just, my teaching are older than the world. How can you grasp their meaning? If you want to know me, look inside your heart. So there you go, Renee. Perfect. And it's something that you can't intellectually figure out, because it's too hard. I've opened the book and looked at so many different things. They talk about the fool being the happiest, and I'm like, what? Society's like looks down on fools. How can that be? So you really have to just kind of let go of a lot of our expectations and our prior teachings. And I guess I should comment here that there's many different interpretations of the Tao Te Ching. It was written in ancient Chinese. The one I'm referring to right now is interpreted by Stephen Mitchell, I have about 4 or 5 other versions. There's a beautiful version that was written by Ursula Le Guin, who is, or who was, I should say, a well-known kind of fantasy sci-fi writer. There's a number of different translations of the Tao Te Ching, and they're all slightly different, but the concepts are the same. And basically, again, you can't, you just have to feel it and accept it and allow yourself to receive it. And not think about it too much.
Yeah, I think that it's true. Don't think about it too much. Because that analytical mind is such a trap. There's
Stuck.
an old witch song, take off your head and put it on the floor. I think it's good advice.
Working mind, as Jillian would call it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you joined us this morning, Veronique, because you are someone who is a true example of living from your heart. You know, you just are so caught up in the light of the universe and the joy. And it's just so nice to have you here today with us. So,
Almost speaks another language.
yeah.
How very neat.
Yeah. And you know, I think Eric's talked about reconnective healing, the frequencies being a language. And it's similar to the Tao. It's really just the flow and accepting and stepping away and just kind of allowing it to unfold.
Yeah, Dr. Eric speaks of reconnective healing being like a language, and I call that the information. You know,
Yeah.
like even the word language is a little bit limiting, but just information as a whole.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a means of communication.
Mhm.
A wordless, like art is a wordless communication.
Yeah. And I see Gordy wrote a note.
I'll read it, Barbara.
Okay, good.
I think he's quoting Rupert Spira.
Okay.
Step back from your thinking mind and just observe the content of your experience.
Beautiful. Yes. Thanks, Gordy. Great. Yeah. Great ad. Yeah.
I think it's so cute that as you were reading that, the cat walked across the screen, which was like, this is the content of our experience right now.
Yeah, this is Esme wanting to join the conversation.
We don't think about it, we just accept it.
Yes.
Yeah. Comes in, it stays a while, it flows out.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, here's chapter 57. I'll just read the first paragraph. If you want to be a great ruler or a great leader, you must learn to follow the Tao. Stop trying to control. Let go of fixed plans and concepts.
Yeah.
And the world will govern itself.
Nice.
Again, you know,
So beautiful. The what you're reading, everything you're reading is so simple and easy to understand. That's why I like it.
Yeah.
You know.
yeah. And yet, in one part of me, I can look at this and think, what? Of course you have to control, you know, you got to plan this and that. And although that's what's happening right now in our world, and look how screwed up it is. So maybe another alternative is
Maybe plan without expectation.
Yes.
And, here's the plan, but it could change at any minute.
Yes.
And the path opens at our feet. And that's the path we're on. So
yeah.
And be prepared for the way to have this sort of surprises present themselves to you, because it isn't always going. Someone once shared something with me which I've always valued and kept in my memory, and that was, when your expectations of another person exceed their ability to reach or satisfy yours, you will always be disappointed. And I took that to heart because it was actually about a relative of mine that it was being sort of shared about. And I use it a lot because, I realize that everybody has a very different way of perceiving things, of interpreting things, of processing things. And if I can just really just pull back far enough to be able to say, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way before. Instead of getting myself embroiled in some emotional tangle because my expectations are sort of wanting things to be a certain way and it's not working out that way. So it's about, flow is very soft, like Aikido, which is a martial art. And Aikido actually takes the energy of the other person and returns it to them, which is interesting. So it's not like competitive. It's not about winning or losing. It's more about sharing. And the balance sort of starts to work back and forth. And there's this energetic exchange, which couldn't happen if you stood there with your hands on your hips saying, no, I said it's supposed to be this way and you got to listen.
Right. Yeah. And doesn't it feel so much better stepping back and just kind of observing and allowing?
It's a receiving, the energy, that shared reception between that allows or just becomes oneness in a way.
Yeah, it's that total accepting, Renee, like you said, let go of your expectations. And I just turned to chapter 22, and this kind of speaks to that. If you want to become whole, let yourself be partial. If you want to become straight, let yourself be crooked. If you want to become full, let yourself be empty. If you want to become reborn, let yourself die. If you want to be given everything, give everything up.
Mm-hmm.
There are things we receive and things we have to leave behind. Yeah. In every moment, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that cycle. The wheel.
Wayne Dyer has written an interpretation. I don't remember exactly what he called his book, but he spent many, many years studying the Tao. So his wisdom and his perspective were very valuable. I believe I did read that book at one point, and it's more of a layman's perspective on the Tao. So it helps you to see without there's sort of an interwoven philosophy, and it can get very deep. It is quite deep, but somehow he's able to maybe simplify things.
That's nice.
For the layman.
What'd you say, Jules?
I said, good to know for the layman.
Yeah. 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 He was very wise. Yeah. Here's one of my favorite chapters, 78. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, yet for dissolving, it is hard and inflexible. Nothing can surpass it. Now think of a rock, which we think of as something hard and heavy and just very unyielding. And the water comes down on the rock, just kind of wears it away. The soft overcomes the hard. The gentle overcomes the rigid. Everyone knows this is true, but few can put it into practice. Therefore, the master remains serene in the midst of sorrow. Evil cannot enter their heart because they have given up helping. And that is the people's greatest help. That's kind of the beauty and the mystery of it, I think.
Yeah.
So where do they teach this? Can someone actually go and study the Tao?
Oh,
other
I'm
than
sure that there's places you can. I mean, I'm just kind of self-taught from this book and then just other, meditations and readings. But this morning when I was trying to do a little research, there are institutes and institutions that support and promote it. So yeah, you can find out online. It's not really religion. It really is more somewhat of a philosophy or a way of life. Or a way of living, I guess I should say, really more a way of living. And that's kind of how I think about reconnective healing too, is it's a way of living. And again, I see just the intermingle and connection between them.
Mhm.
They're both so much about accepting and receiving
Mm.
and not thinking about it too hard. And yet some people find that very hard. I think people want things to be complicated. I'm not sure why, but sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, they think it's so simple. It's too
Smarter.
simple. It can't be,
What's
Can't-
that, Jules?
Huh?
Was that you who was saying can't be, can't be?
Well, yeah, I was saying when people are like that, like before, I said the words or the thoughts, concepts are very simple, and that's why I like it. But people think, well, that can't be it. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. Yeah.
It's always both. You look at the problems around us, and the simple answer is love. And
Yeah.
yet, if you look at the problem with your head, it's very complex. So,
Yeah.
so
And I think that most often, based upon experiences that we've had in life, if they're difficult and hard, and I think the majority of us on earth, that's why we're here, right? To learn. They're difficult and hard, and it creates a fear from a young age. And then you live in that fear for so long, it's difficult to undo the things that you've been programmed with. So being able to just let go and be in flow, you can still plan and have goals, but to be in flow and allow it instead of being in resistance with that fear and anxiety or conflict all the time. But I think that that's wise. The opposite of love is fear, and Mary had just mentioned love as well. So yeah, I think they're in direct opposites. So, or opposition with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And people get in the habit, I think, of thinking that way, become very fear-based
oh
and
yeah.
very, have to figure it out, make something happen and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Mhm.
But it looks like we're starting to run out of time, you guys. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Yeah. We'll see you next week with another topic. Enjoy your week. Stay in the flow.
wonderful.